All right, Justin. So now let's talk about owner dependency, because what typically happens, you have a business owner that has a great idea. They want to start a business. And as they're starting this business, they're wearing all of these hats. And that's great in the beginning because you're bootstrapping this whole thing and it makes sense, right? But as you continue to grow, now you're $1 million, $2 million in revenue. Now that starts to actually work against you as a business owner. So let's talk a little bit about owner dependency, some of the pitfalls, what that causes when we're looking at valuation and when you're actually ready to exit, and then some ways to, as you're continuing to grow your business, how to get out of that. Right. So let's talk about owner dependency a little bit.
Owner dependency, the last time we talked about concentration risk.
Yeah.
Owner dependency is usually biggest concentration risk.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're the ones, like you said, they wear many hats. Majority of the time they're either product guy, where they're the one that's creating the product, or they're the sales guy.
Yeah.
Those, what I've seen, are the two most common things. And I always see entrepreneurs brag, I'm the best sales guy on our team. I'm the best sales guy on our team. And it's like, that is not a brag.
That's not actually a great point to make, right?
That's actually hurts you, because if the company is so dependent on the owner, there's an argument that the company is worth $0.
Yeah.
There is an argument, because when somebody goes to acquire you and you don't come on board after the fact, that business can't operate. And the biggest test you can do is if you left for 30, 60, 90 days, what would happen to your company?
Yeah.
And most entrepreneurs would say, my company will no longer exist. And that's the biggest red flag. It hurts your valuation tremendously. Like I said, there's an argument that you're worth $0.
It's worthless if you're not on board.
If you're not on board continuing.
Right.
And it's the hardest thing for entrepreneurs to let go. Control. They're the bottleneck. They usually either like I said, they're the sales guy, or they're the guy who signs all the checks and is worried about every $3 to $30 payment on a $2 million company, and they don't empower their employees.
Right.
And if you looked at their organization chart, it is just them with a bunch of spokes going off to people that just report to them. There is no structure. There is no anything. It's just, I look at it as a wheel.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. Yeah, everything is feeding into them. So as you're growing, then what would you say is what's a good way for an owner to be able to take a look at that? First, that assessment is there, right? Okay, if I can't leave for 30 days and things continue, then I know that that's an issue, right? So then what would be my next steps as the business owner?
I want to preface this isn't a light switch that we just change, right? This isn't something that just changes overnight.
Right.
This is a 2-year process, 2 to 3 year process to really fully get out of it. Because at the end of the day, you want to empower somebody else. The first thing you do is hire a number 2. Who is your number 2? And at that point, if you're the sales guy, you have that person shadow you for 6 months. And so you can train that person. I saw an interview. Everybody knows the famous YouTuber, Mr. Beast. And he's the most successful YouTuber ever.
Right.
And he had an interview and said, I hired somebody, and for 3 years, they just shadowed me wherever I went.
Wow.
I did something, they went there. So when I'm creating videos, they create and do the exact same thing. He knows he has the secret sauce. He knows how YouTube works.
Yeah.
So he goes, this is the blueprint. I have the blueprint.
Right.
So he hired somebody that just shadowed him. And so he can trust that person. So that's where I've seen it too, where you hire a number 2 to take out something on your plate. I always start with either what you're good at, or that's usually the last thing you want to do is what you're good at. The first thing is what you're not good at.
Right.
A lot of entrepreneurs don't like admin work. So the first thing I say is, hey, if you had somebody and you paid them, $3,000 a month to do this, could you get $3,000 more in sales? Every single person says yes. So it's like, well, that's a net positive, right? So you want to structure a team around you. Start with stuff you don't like to do.
Yeah.
Have them and empower them. Make sure there's procedures in place, but you want to empower them.
Right.
And have to trust your team, because usually one entrepreneur, once you get to that $2 to $3 million mark, you are by far the biggest bottleneck, and you can't grow.
Absolutely.
You can't scale. So you have to be able to trust and empower somebody.
Absolutely. And being on the other side of that, I've discovered that even within the firm that I at one point just was the bottleneck. There was so much that had to come to me for my approval and for my review, and that really slowed things down for the team members. And we had team members at the time, but that really started to slow things down. And so getting out of your own way, it can feel a little weird, like you said. It feels like you're kind of handing over the reins to someone else. But what it does is it, as an owner, as an entrepreneur, it opens you up. It frees you up to be able to do other things and to continue to be creative and create the vision and share that vision with your team. And something else that you mentioned too was having those procedures and creating those systems. And I think that's the other thing that's important. That's a big piece of that, because if you just bring someone on board and you say, okay, this is what you're going to do, well, at some point that person is going to continue to grow within your organization. And so you want to be able to have something in place to where they can share that with the next person that comes in. And so it's good to have those systems in place, which I think that's the next thing we're going to be talking about, is systems and processes. But it's important to have that, because now you have that, you don't have to go and train the next person too, because there's a system that's already there.
Yeah, and one thing that I also see the pitfall and why entrepreneurs don't want to make that next step is because they just look at cash flow and they're like, well, I'm just looking at my bottom line, and because some of these people you're hiring, if you're hiring your number two, they're not going to be cheap, right?
Right.
So what I always recommend is make sure you give them some base salary, but a piece of the pie on the upside, some percentage. All right, this is our baseline. Anything above, $2 million, we grow to $10 million, then you get 5% of the revenue or the profits.
Yeah.
However we want to configure it, but there is going to be a 90 to 180 day cash flow issue before you see some type of performance, right? Because when you hire people in there, they're expected to put systems in place. They're expected to grow your sales team. They're expected to do something. So that return isn't going to be right away. I know entrepreneurs are coming in here and saying, I don't know if I want to risk, 6 months of cash flow issues to where, because you're going to see a step that you're going to see it decrease, and then you're going to see it exponentially increase. But you have to be able to sustain those 6 months and just gut it. We can work out the math to make sure you can afford it and what you can pay. But that's why I always say is, if you believe in this person, have them participate on the upside. So as they scale and as they meet their goals, it's helping you out, and you're rewarding their hard work, so they have some skin in the game to get to those levels. But that is something that is you have to be aware of. There is going to be some lower cash flow for like 6 months before you start seeing that.
There's a transition period there. Something else that you mentioned that I want to hit on quickly is the fact that a lot of times, yes, there is that mentality that I'm the best person for this, right? I'm the one that can do this the best. But then there's also that mindset of, man, I'm not great at this. And it feels weird to bring someone in who excels at a certain area that you don't excel in. But what I've seen is that helps the organization as a whole. When you have someone that's really efficient in something and they're able to get in there and do a great job at it, and that's not something you have to worry about, that helps the organization and you as the entrepreneur.
Definitely. You expect people to come in there. You don't want somebody to come in there and be a yes man.
Right.
Because if you bring somebody in that is just a yes man, you're going to stay where you are. You're not going to grow. Because they're just going to end up doing what you did, and you're at your ceiling. Right. So you want to come in there and bring somebody who brings something different in an area that they, like you said, excels at, that you don't necessarily do, and you just have to be comfortable with that. And that's the only way your business will grow.
Right.
It's the only way your business will grow.
Yeah. Well, man, that's really good. That's really good insight. So the takeaway is, as an owner, we definitely need to be looking at things that are restricting our business and making our business attractive to suitors that are potentially looking at acquiring, what we've built up over time. And as much as it hurts to kind of let pieces of our baby go, we have to do that in order to really maximize the value of our organizations. So.
Yeah, because as a goal, I think, of every entrepreneur is you don't want to buy a job, you want to become the investor. And the only way to become the investor is to let go some of the reins.
Well said. All right, good stuff. Thanks, Justin.